Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Around the Table GTA. I'm coming to you guys in a state of confusion. A lot of things didn't go as planned, but it just kind of made me think about reading. So that's what today's topic is going to be about. It's going to be about reading. And for me, I think traditional reading has become kind of like foreign, unless it's mandatory. So if people are going to school, if people need to read up on the news, they'll read. But out of leisure, they probably won't read. I think it's just becoming less and less prevalent, unless people are like reading shit posts or scrolling through online, and it's kind of disturbing. For me, I read, right? But the biggest trigger for me for reading or reading more was I used to have this work friend. We're still friends. We just don't work together anymore. We caught up this weekend, so it was actually pretty cool. But he said that he hasn't read a book since high school. That was like years back, right? And that kind of shocked me. And it pushed me to read more, right? He's not a dumb guy, right? But it just made me realize that wow, we're really moving away from books and just seeking out knowledge, right? And if you've been listening to this podcast for the past 6 months, wow, it's been 6 months, almost 7 months, pretty much 7 months now. This is more of a open mindset kind of podcast, not always positivity, but just kind of how to deal with things, right? So reading is something that does that. So, what's important about reading, right? The main purpose of reading is learning, right? Um, Being able to read is something that's great, whether it's in your language or multiple languages, or, if it's text code, right? Apparently, there's there's like a emoji language. I still have to like figure out where to find this so that I could send secret emoji messages, right? This is what happens here in the 21st century, right? Just anyways, I love emojis. Either way, right? It's something that opens up opportunities as well, right? Because if you think back in the day, if you didn't know how to read, you were told what to do. People are still told what to do now, but someone would say, yeah, this is what this book says. You have to believe it, right? So, that's more of like a Bible reference or Quran reference where people are telling people this is what it says, but it could be something completely different, right? And that's pretty scary if you think about it, right? So, we're in a day and age where there's so many resources that are there for us, but because there's so much happening in the world, there's just so much clutter, right? And it doesn't only affect learning, it affects jobs, it affects dating, and it kind of affects just people's versions of reality, right? Um, I usually talk to people about random things, right? And then sometimes I talk about how when I was on the internet way too much, my mindset was completely different. So that's even how I started doing my social media like detoxes where I'd be off for a month at least just because I wanted to deal with normal stuff, right? I know some people who are just so involved with what's going on in certain communities or because they saw this on TV that they're mad or they saw this on the internet and they're mad and it's just like is this really affecting you? Is this how the life around you actually is? Or are you being fed a narrative, right? And it's similar to, back in the days where a lot of people were not able to read, right? People are being told this is happening, you should be mad, or this is happening, you should be happy, instead of actually going out there and doing the research or, you know, forming their own kind of opinion on something, right? It's strange and it's a little bit worrisome now that I think about it, right? Or even that's how I'm thinking about it out loud here on this podcast. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. Um, but that's a reason why you should read more, right? It opens up your mindset. And if you follow traditional reading, there's two types of like literature. There's um, fictional and like factual or real stuff, right? So, like a research paper going through results, that's real, right? And then, comic books, manga, something like Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey, that's fictional, but at the same time, you can still relate to it, and that's the beauty about reading, right? It kind of suspends reality, and it could put you in another world or another mindset, right? So it could be like talking with someone who opposes your ideas or who's super into your ideas, right? But it's completely in their world or their mindscape, right? Where, you know, it could be relatable or it could not be relatable, or you could just be like, how does this person do it? Like, if you look if you look at people like Batman, right, or even Superman, how does no one know who Superman is, right? He's literally putting on glasses, right? But some people like myself, when I put on glasses, I look like a completely different person. But you know, just adding one or two together, you'd be like, yo, that's definitely Superman, right? And thinking about just how the world is now, right? If you think about the comic book world, let's say it's a mirror to this world, someone has to be catching Superman like changing or you know using like facial recognition to be like, you know what? This is a 98% match of Superman. This is probably Superman. But either way, it's it's something that suspends reality, but it can be totally relatable, right? It also makes you realize that there's more out there, right? A lot of people have different experiences, right? And I think music does it very well to show this comparison, but at the same time, like a good biography or someone telling their story and you're reading through it, it's wild, right? Sometimes you see um, book fans get so mad at a movie adaptation because when you read something, it's you trying to understand how that person has phrased it, right? When you're watching a movie, it's the director's version of what they read, right? So reading keeps you in your own mindset as well as taking in someone's mindset. So it's just like when someone describes someone in a book, right? Whether it's how they look, what they sound like, what they smell like, right? And then you see an actor or actress playing that character and it's like, no, that's not what I imagined, right? Um, Reading does that, right? It puts you in your mindset and kind of makes you mold the world in, or mold that world into the world that you know, right? So there's a lot out there and there's a lot that people deal with, right? And that's a big thing about my podcast, where it's just, opening your mind to that, and how you feel about something can be completely different than how someone else feels about it. That's going to be another episode. Uh, yeah, this is going to be the one about like taking things to heart, right? Where you could see something as one way and it's not necessarily that way. Um, a word that's thrown out there a lot is toxic, right? Not a lot of people people realize what that word means, I think, because sometimes someone will tell you a story and you realize that they were the toxic person, or how they deal with everything is pretty toxic, and that's why they're having all these issues, right? Sometimes the problem is you. Right? Another good thing about reading is it makes you realize that there's certain things that people are doing intentionally, or it could help you open your mind to the characteristics of others, or the characteristics of things that you could or should avoid, right? So, if you're reading a story about, like, let's say a serial killer and how manipulative they could be, right? Or even like a research paper on psychopaths, right? It could help you realize or see certain patterns in people where it's like, oh wow, maybe this person that I'm talking to isn't genuine. Maybe they are a psychopath, or maybe something's wrong with them. That general knowledge there from reading, it go very far, right? It's just like when you take a course on almost anything, you now know so much more, right? Something basic, which I wouldn't say is basic as in common knowledge or easy to achieve, is like, doing a CPR course, right? Once you do a CPR course, you realize, oh wow, if I don't do this properly, a person could die, or it's this simple to bring someone back from like the brinks of death, right? They have all these steps on how to do it safely, and you're learning it, right? Um, I'm a big person on, practical versus theory, right? And I'm the type of person where you could put me in a box, but if I have the theory, give me enough time and I'll learn how to do it practically, right? You don't even have to show me practically. I'll do it if I read hard enough, right? Or even if I watch hard enough. So that's a thing where, you have to analyze yourself and see how much knowledge you could acquire, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's what we know and what we can do that make us more and more useful every day, right? You could be rich or you could have a pretty face, but that could only go so far, right? What if currency changes and all your money is gone, right? What can you do to get this new form of money, or what can you do to um, attain it? How are you useful if you don't have your cash, right? The same thing with, being attractive. If you're attractive and you can't do anything, you just look good, eventually no one's gonna care, right? Looks fade. So it's something to look out for, right? Or just like, the apocalypse happens and we need to people who could fight, or people who know how to grow things, or people who know how to build weapons or houses, right? What does your money do, right? What does your beauty do? Um, what does your knowledge do, right? So if you haven't read a book in a while, hopefully this podcast makes you think about grabbing a book. Recently, I've been reading Limitless, right? That's it's a pretty good book so far. I'm only like 7 pages in, but before that, I went through like 200 chapters of uh, book because I thought it was finished, so I thought it'd be at the end. So I just binged it for a day, and I realized that it's still ongoing. So I like reading things that are finished if it's like a manga form or comic book form, because if I really like something, I just get like very, very into it, right? I go into my own world, right? And that's the thing about reading too. You can get into your own world, or you dive into the world of someone else, or someone else's perspective, right? It's just like reading a murder mystery, and it gets you super into it. I remember when I was younger, I wanted to be a detective because I kept watching all these murder mystery shows and reading those types of books, right? The detective life seemed super interesting. In reality, for the most part, it's boring from what I've heard from other detectives, like actual detectives. I love how I said other detectives. I'm not I'm not a detective, but I like to think I am sometimes, right? But in general, it's stuff that's not that exciting, right? But when it does become exciting, it can be tough, right? So, yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap this one up. Hopefully, you guys had a great weekend. Make sure you do read a book, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. See you later.